everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Motivate with Coach Camp. I, of course, am your host, Coach Camp, and we are down here in these fantastic studios of SRP with Mr. Derek Michaud. As you can tell by the setup and the camera, we're on a Zoom this week. Sometimes my guests are not able to fly in, and that's okay because they have amazing stories. And look, this is a great way to reach people everywhere. And this guest for this week is somebody that I met at the Blocks. You guys have heard me talk about that many times, I'm sure. It was that entrepreneurial TV show that has not come out yet as we're taping this episode, but it's on the way. It'll be here soon. And when you get there and you start meeting folks, there are so many personalities, people from all over America, but then there were people from all over the world. And this person is from other parts of the world. And we sat down and we're having conversation at one of our meals, and we're just sharing who we are. And as he continued to talk and we continued to relate, the light bulb goes on. And I'm like, hey, have you ever been on a podcast? And I said, maybe when I get back home, we should connect again and we should do this thing. And so he agreed. This is just if you've ever met a person that you thought, this could be a living James Bond. That's kind of what I thought with this guy. So when I met him and he starts telling me a story, I'm like, that's wild. What else you got? That's wild. What else you got? So I'm just making notes. And finally, I'm like, I'm stopping taking notes. Now we are going to have a conversation. So my guest for this week is Mr. Martin Von. How do you say your last name, sir?
Martin Fritz.
Fritz. Okay. Can I have like Turl? Tirol.
Oh, that's where I'm from. That's von Tirol. It's like von Trapp.
Wow. So many things to know. That's crazy. All right. So Martin is currently in Sedona, Arizona. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and that's not an Arizona accent that I pick up.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
I'm trying to hide my accent.
I don't think you're being very successful at it. That's okay, though. That's all right. That's part of the uniqueness of you, sir. So let's start with this, Mr. Martin. Let's share with my listeners, my viewers, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
So originally, I grew up in Austria. Most of you maybe know Austria from Sound of Music, which I did not even know that this movie existed until I came to the United States. And nobody else in Austria knows about the movie, so I had to send the video over. I grew up in Innsbruck, and that's the western part of Austria. It's a ski town in the Alps, and some of you folks might know it from the Olympians. We had the Olympic Games there, downhill races and so on in the 76 and 72 and 76. So skiing, hiking, you know Salzburg. Salzburg is about 2 hours away. Some of you know Schloss Castle Neuschwanstein in Germany. That's 2 hours away. So I'm right in the center of the Alps.
What is the native language in Austria?
It's German. So in Austria, it's German, just like Germany, parts of Switzerland. However, we do have a bunch of accents there, and sometimes our valleys are very narrow. It could happen that you have two valleys next to each other, maybe 10 miles apart on the map. However, you don't understand the other valley because they are influenced more from Italy, or the other ones are influenced more from Germany. It all depends how they came together. There's a few examples, like there's a fourth language in Switzerland, is Wallis. It's a mix out of French, Italian, and German. And it's really hard to understand.
I understand that because here in Mississippi, sometimes when I'm with my fellow brethren from Arkansas, I have no idea what they're saying. So it's just, it's the Southern accent can be deep, and then how you say certain words can obviously be confusing. Right. So growing up in Austria, did you have brothers, sisters?
I still do have one sister left. My other one passed away 2 years ago. And so I have one sister left, and she lives or works in Switzerland and lives in Austria.
So what was life like when y'all were growing up together? What was like a normal day at the Fritz house?
Well, I was adopted from my uncle and aunt, and the reason why is because the living situation of my mom back then in the day with my sister didn't allow another child. So I grew up with my uncle and my aunt, and we grew up on a farm. And like the day was going out and taking care of the animals and mow the hills, and you see the hills behind me. That's actually belongs to my family there, and we still were mowing those meadows in the back with by
Wow.
hand in the 70s.
Mowing them by hand? That's
Yeah, my grandfather was
wow.
really stuck in the old ways, and I think the first tractor they bought was in 1979.
Oh,
So
wow.
very late in the game, we still had three Clydesdales to do all the work around the farm.
Holy moly. And so, when's the last time you've been back there? Just curious.
Last time was 2020.
2020. So it's been a few years
Yeah.
now. Growing up there, what was like the influence? What do you think? See, I'm trying to relate a little bit to a person from another country, right? So you're growing up as a kid here in America. You think about being a professional ball player of some sport, or, there's police officers, firefighters, military. There's all these influences here in America. What was it like as a little boy growing up in Austria? What were the ideas of what you would become as you got older?
Well, I would say, all these influences come from a source, and most of the time the source of your influence is TV, and so was mine. I saw the Western movies. I always wanted to come to the United States. I always wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to be a firefighter, and I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. So I had pretty
Yeah, as a
much this,
kid, you wanted to be those things.
right.
Wow.
So I wanted to be with 6 years old. I wanted to be all of that, and down the road, I started an education in electronics and telecommunication. I went to college and finalized the college with an engineering degree in telecommunication, not knowing where my path is going to lead me.
Hmm.
So, as it is mandatory in Austria that you join the military in the ages between 18 to 34, I joined the military force with 18 years old after my college. And so basically, I started out in the nuclear, biological, chemical defense force. You guys have that here too. And we were, I would say, for the Austrian military type, we were kind of special forces. I mean, not the special forces you might know, but we
Like
were
SEALs, yeah.
our military, we were kind of special forces, and they sent us all over the country. Not over only the country, but also over to Europe. I had the chance to go to Albania after an earthquake to do search and rescue there. I had a chance to go to Chernobyl 4 years after the nuclear disaster to do some testing there. So this branch of the military got me all over Europe in different tasks, with different tasks, different duties.
I want to ask you a couple questions on that. So you said mandatory, and you said that you finished college and you were 18. So you finished college by the time you were 18?
We have a different school system there.
Wow.
So basically, what we do is you start with 14, you start either a trade school, or you can go to an extended college. And the college takes you 5 years, and you end up with a degree, and that's the engineering degree in electronics and so on. You have a chance to add 2 more years then to advanced college, and then you would have like a bachelor's degree here.
Okay, so you're finishing up your school at 18 and you go into the military. Now that was fascinating. You said mandatory. How many years do you guys have to serve?
So mandatory is 9 months. It's not
Yeah.
really a long time, but then you can sign up for volunteer, adding more years to it, or you can make it a career path.
Is it male only, or is this boys and girls?
So male is mandatory, and
Okay.
now female is on a voluntary base. So they can join if they want to, or if they choose so.
So those things are all fascinating to me because here in America, as you know, obviously living here for the period of time you've been, that's foreign, so much so that I think about some of the people I grew up with, some of the kids I know now, putting them into a military situation. It would both be good and challenging for those that are training them.
Right.
It's not,
Right.
it's easy to say everybody could benefit from it, but I'm going to say it's not made for everybody. And for you, that I think that it obviously started to mold you a little bit. And so, how long were you in the military?
I was in there for 4 years in total. because with the nuclear, biological, chemical defense force, it is basically the fire department of the military.
Hmm.
And that education I gathered there helped me then later to become an instructor for firefighters in 1991 at the State Fire Academy.
And you said you went to Chernobyl. So now that, for anyone that would not know that, you should do your homework if you don't. It was a nuclear meltdown. And when you went there, what was the job you were doing? What exactly were you doing there?
So basically, we got requested from a few universities to do a preliminary testing of the radiation levels around Chernobyl to make sure, because they wanted to go in, and actually the scientists went in there and did check out the reactor, did check out some of the things or how it happened, if it's still stable, if the concrete coffin that put over it, if it's still solid and secured, or if it's leaking.
Yeah. Have you had any kind of health effects from that?
No.
No.
So basically, it's with radiation, it's always the way you can help yourself or protect yourself is by distance, by time being in that zone, in the hot zone, or by basically being undercover or in cover. So with the cover, that doesn't really work if you have to go in there testing, but we were reduced to 20 minutes at the time and then got out of the hot zone again and then back in and did the testing. So that was sufficient to keep the radiation levels on a, say, permittable level.
What kind of testing would they do on you to make sure you weren't glowing at night?
Well, you get your so-called dosimeter, and the dosimeter is nothing else that counts of how much radiation you're going to take on. And then, of course, when you come back out and you get rid of your protective suit and everything, they do decontamination, and then, yeah, that's about it. And they test you again if you absorbed any radiation or an elevated level of radiation. And you get your tablets, your iodine tablets, and all of that. What back then was known that is helpful. I mean, there's other things these days.
Sure. Yeah, I asked those questions. Obviously, I'm familiar with all of that. I just wanted to kind of put that out there for my listeners. But time distance shielding, you're speaking my language, obviously, being a firefighter. So you're right. Obviously, that is something that is associated with firefighters in particular, because you respond to all types of situations. And so when you do your 4 years, you now have a background in biochemical engineering. You have a background in firefighting. You obviously have military experience in general. What are you thinking as you're wrapping up your forces? So for my listeners, by the way, this is all a part of the story. As this continues, at some point, you're going to be like I was as I'm sitting across from this man at a dinner table, and he continues to add to the story. And I'm like, wow. And so this is all a part of it. That's why I'm building this thing up here. So after 4 years, what is Martin saying? Hey, look, this is what I think I'm going to do next.
Yeah, there was the opportunity to become instructor in the state fire department. They looked for a radio communication specialist, but also for an instructor. And I joined 1991, filled the footsteps of the radio communication engineer pretty quickly, took over the entire department, and also focused on the training of firefighters for wildfire attack with helicopters and other scenarios, and the broad range of firefighting in general.
So you said wildland firefighting. Are there a lot of wildland fires in America? We have areas Northwest every year. Every year they're going to have several large forest fires. Obviously, not having ever lived in Austria, I don't pay attention to that. Are there a lot of forest fires that are in the Austria or in the area you were in?
Well, I have to say one thing. What helps us a lot, we have a little bit the climate of Oregon. It does rain a lot. We have very moist forests, but we also have, just in the latest years, more and more fires coming up because it gets drier. Forests are drying out quicker and so on. What is our advantage is that the country is so small. If you think about Austria, it's not really that big. It fits into the Navajo Nation here in Arizona, and that's just a third of the state.
Yeah.
So Austria is not really big. When they see a little smoke, when a fire is detected, they throw immediately 200, 300 firefighters on that one. They come in with 4, 5, 6 helicopters in no time. This is what you don't see here, because here it's federal, here it's state or whatever, or forestry, and it's paid jobs. Over there, there's 90% of the firefighters are volunteers, and that's why you have these huge numbers of firefighters available to you, because if they sound the alarm, you can count on hundreds of firefighters showing up to this event.
You know, in America, actually, the truth is, and I don't know if you're familiar, but in America, the majority of rural fire departments are all volunteer. You know, the big cities obviously have paid. So, like if you go to Phoenix, that's a paid department. But when you get out into the rural settings all across America, that's volunteer. That's where I started out. I started out as a volunteer in rural Mississippi. And so that's not too different than America. But you're talking about the size of Austria. That's important to note as well, because obviously you have the numbers of people, but then you have the lack of landscape. Because here, when you look out to like Montana, you go into California, the areas where it's just massive acreage with tons of big trees and a fire starts, it does not take long for that to spread and become very difficult to manage. So were you ever one of those jumpers that jumped into the fire?
We don't do the jumping like here with parachutes, but we fly them in with helicopters, and that was part of our job. Was if you fly them in, we have transport nets that fit basically 10 firefighters. You hang underneath a helicopter, and you're gonna be flown into a landing zone or somewhere, and then you start your work there. The next rotation is then you bring more equipment. The next rotation is you bring heavier equipment, whatever they need to do there. The other thing is it's sometimes we have the advantage that I would say half of Austria is alpine area. So the mountains do help us to contain fires pretty quickly. They don't spread because, first of all, our forests stop at an elevation of about 5,500 feet, right? And after that is just mountainous area. There's not much growth anymore and so on. It stops right there. So we have a lot of help just by our landscape.
Sure. Yeah, the topography of it, and that makes sense. I think it was, now correct me if I'm wrong, Scottsdale, Arizona, where the 18 or 19 firefighters were killed fighting the
Prescott.
Yeah. I knew it's had a Scott in there.
The Granite Mountain Hot Shots.
Yes, the Hot Shots, correct. Yeah, they had a whole movie on it, right? So I'm trying to go off of memory. Martin, forgive me. I turned 51 yesterday. The memory slips.
Happy birthday, though.
Thank you. I just remembered it was northern area of Arizona. I've been through there. I've driven through there. I've seen the memorial for it. I asked that because is that something that ever was a issue over in Austria? Did you guys ever have, like specialized teams end up getting trapped and killed? Because that's not often it happens in America, but it does happen.
We do have casualties, certainly not in the amount of how this Prescott Granite Mountain Hotshots suffered from that an entire team got enclosed. I mean, we have accidents where somebody gets accidentally killed by a falling tree when they cut down trees. More likely so is when we have heavy damage by wind and we have to clean up trees that are under pressure and tension, and they don't really pay attention how to clean up the trees. It does happen that somebody gets killed in the line of duty.
Yeah, I'm just curious about how that played out as far as the comparison level. Now, along with firefighting, it is common in America, at least in the big cities. I don't want to put this as a blanket across the whole nation, but in the big cities, it is common for the firefighters to also have to cross-train to be a paramedic. Is that the case in Austria?
We don't do that. So in Austria, it is completely separated from the fire department. We do use the Red Cross in Austria that provides all basically paramedic services all over the country. We have a few private companies that are also providing services, but the major part in Austria is provided and served by the Red Cross.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't you tell me that you were a paramedic as well?
I was a paramedic as well. I did that as a volunteer on the side. This is just something, when you start, and that was in the beginning of my firefighter career. I tried to learn as much as possible, besides all my firefighting career. And I did sign up for a volunteer paramedic, and I did that for about 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Surely they have paid EMS service though, right?
they do. But
Yeah.
just like here on the countryside, you have your volunteer firefighters. Over there is we do also, unless it's transports to other countries and so on, then you get paid for. For the most uh, I would say organizations like Red Cross, they can exist and do exist because of all the volunteer work. They do have professionals in there, but most of them are volunteers. Again,
Yeah.
entire Austria is big on volunteers when it comes to all of that civil protection, I would call it, and or emergency services. Besides the law enforcement, there's no volunteers to be found, but everything else pretty heavily exists and consists out of volunteers.
Martin, you're probably aware, along with me being a firefighter, I was a paramedic, and along with me being a professional motivational speaker, I am also a paramedic professor. So, what is the school like? Because I'm curious to become a paramedic, what is the school like? Is it a year long, 2 years long to get your license, or was it a formal license to be a paramedic?
So basically, you always teamed up with a professional paramedic in the beginning. So most of the time, you're going to be a driver or an assistant, depending on what kind of team you have. The other thing, our system is totally different than yours here, because we have the emergency doctor service system. That basically means that a doctor will be on any point in the country in 5 minutes after call.
Going
The
to the
way how
call?
they
They go to
Yeah,
the call? Oh, wow.
the way how they do it, they plastered the country with helicopters, and these doctors fly in with the helicopter while the ambulance is on the way to the scene or is already there and says, "Hey, we need a doctor." And then they fly the doctor in, so they bring the doctor to the scene. So that's a
Wow.
little bit. So our paramedics do not have the responsibilities and the education that you guys have here.
Yeah.
Uh, is the volunteers have even a better education than the professionals because their school is even because nobody has to pay for it. They decide to get more training, they get more education than professionals do. So this is interesting on the firefighting side, but just as much as on the paramedic side.
Absolutely. That's why I'm asking. Look, if anything, my listeners in this episode, they're going to learn so much about the differences, the similarities in jobs, but then the differences in approach in two different countries, which is one of the other things I really loved about the idea of our conversation. So obviously, you're getting a lot of on-the-job training, it sounds like. And you have the
Right.
doctors that fly to the scene. Now, in a situation where a person is in dire need, will the doctor just ride in the ambulance to the closest hospital facility, or will they just load them and take them in the helicopter?
They take him in the helicopter. So if something is really that urgent, and unless it's a reason, for example, punctured lung, you can't go up in the air because of the pressure difference, or the weather doesn't allow a low-level flight to
Sure.
the hospital because of fog situation, cloud, or whatever.
Sure.
Uh, Even though they do have IFI in all the paramedic helicopters there, but it is just we have so many ropeways and so many cables going from valley to valley, used for power lines, used for telephone lines, used for wood logging, that these cables are a killer for helicopter flight.
I
And
imagine.
sometimes these cables are even there, even though they are not in the obstacle map, they are there. And a lot, even a few of my good friends died because they got chopped by a cable.
Oh,
So
dang. Wow.
yeah.
So the question then is, this is funny, not funny, right? So I worked in big city for a long time, and they will call an ambulance for like a mosquito bite. What does that play out like in Austria? You guys get a call out to a person that's got like an itchy mosquito bite. What is the response moment? I'm just curious.
911. Our 911 reacts to that. They will tell you, go.
No thanks. Yeah, they can't do that in
Yeah.
America. It's like, okay, we got an ambulance on the
No,
way
we
and a
can't.
fire truck. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I'm just
No, no,
saying. Look, I had to throw
they
that in.
will
It's
give
true
you some
story.
house remedies. They will give you some house remedies. Oh, we
Lots
do
of people
have
are.
some. I mean, here was just the tragic about that one was back then in the days when the decision was made that paramedics have to decide if they need a rescue helicopter or not. And the first lawsuits came in. Then
Mm.
all these responsibilities were transferred away from them because it said automatically if something is or could develop to an urgent need, we're gonna send the helicopter. And that's why we have in this small little country over 250 rescue helicopters now, because they can, so that the idea is every doctor has to be on each location between 5 and 15 minutes, depending on where you are. So in the city areas, it's 5 minutes. In the countryside, it's 15 minutes. And that's really not a long time.
No, it's not. Honestly, when I worked in rural EMS, it might be 30 to 40 minutes before the ambulance got
Yeah,
to the scene. And then you had
right.
another 40 minutes or longer to a hospital if you had to go by ground. So now we do have helicopters here in America, as you know, but that's for life flight. And the paramedics call those guys, right? So it's not the dispatch doesn't decide that. That is on the paramedics in America. So it's funny because this is a great segue. Most people probably know, but I'm not going to assume everybody knows. Arnold Schwarzenegger is from Austria. And one of his famous lines is, "Get to the chopper." Do you remember that line? You remember that line?
I
I don't
do.
remember which movie was it. So, how much did Arnold Schwarzenegger play into you deciding to become a helicopter pilot?
Uh, it was not so much Arnold Schwarzenegger that basically inspired me to become a helicopter pilot. That was a decision I made long before I met him. And he was
Met him.
actually,
So you've met Arnold.
yeah, yeah, he was one
Oh
of my
wow.
clients. He was one of my clients when I had a helicopter company in
Oh
Austria.
wow. That's cool.
So the decision to become a pilot was basically after 13 years in the State Fire Department and training people, do wildfire attacks, flying on the nets, being out there pretty much every wildfire. I decided one day when I had a flight home after a disaster, I decided one day I don't want to be in the net anymore, or I don't want to be tangling underneath the helicopter anymore. I want to fly that thing. And that was when I made the decision to go for my flight training.
Don't mind me asking, how old were you at that moment?
31.
So you're 31. You've now been in the military. You've been specialized in the sense of like the special forces of your military, as you said, firefighter, instructor, now going into being a helicopter pilot. You said before that the education, a lot of the education's free. What is it like to become a helicopter pilot? Is that education free as well?
No, it's just like in every country. Just like here, you go for your PPL, then you go for your CPL. Uh, the costs are a little bit or were a little bit cheaper until we had these huge fuel prices, what we see right now.
Yeah.
But when I was coming here for training in 2005 for the first time, um, the fuel prices were cheap, and it was about 30% cheaper to fly helicopter here than over there in Austria. It was just a difference in fuel prices.
Yeah.
Um, but I still did my licensing in Austria, and I had the luck that I never consumed any vacation time when I was working for the State Fire Department. And so they had me basically on the job still, even though I didn't have to work anymore for another additional year because I had consumed or not consumed so much vacation time. And they just said, okay, we're going to honor that. Go fulfill your dream, go become a pilot, and you still
How
get
long is that
paid if you
training?
have a job. And yeah,
How long was
that
that
was
training to
pretty
become a
awesome of
pilot?
them.
Yeah,
Huh?
that is a really cool trade-off for sure. How long was the helicopter school?
So I completed my private pilot license in less than a month because I had the time to
Oh,
just push it through.
yeah.
And the commercial pilot license I was done in 3 additional months. So altogether 4 months until I was completed with the CPL, the commercial pilot license.
And that's one more um coincidence slash cross comparison. I'm actually saving money right now to get my private license, but it's
Good.
for prop planes. It's not for helicopters, which I would have no problem flying a helicopter. In fact, whenever we were in Arizona a couple years back, we took the old helicopter tour over the Grand Canyon, which was amazing. It was absolutely
Wow.
amazing. It was phenomenal. In fact, it was one of the best moments of like living an experience I've ever had. So to my listeners, this is why I knew Martin was going to be such a great example of chase your dreams. You know, I think growing up, sometimes family members or friends, influences will try to guide or direct you into one path, and they think you should stay the path. But when you really are wanting to experience life and live life, I don't think you should put walls up or parameters on that. You should experience the things in the season that you want to experience them and go in full tilt. And you and I were very similar in that, where I've been in the military and then I became a firefighter paramedic and now I'm an instructor. And so it's like you allow yourself to be completely involved in whatever that thing is. And then whenever something shifts or changes, you follow that path. And before we started our interview, Martin, I told you at one point I was looking at moving abroad for different culture ideas because let's face it, we get one shot, man. One shot. You only got so many years in the tank. Get out there and live life. Don't be scared to take chances. And Austria was on my top 3 list of places I would like to live for a while. Life happens, family happens, and then you have to reprioritize. So didn't make that move happen. At least I'm going to use the word yet. Martin, I'm going to use the word yet. But here's what I want to say. So at some point, here you are, you're well established in Austria. I would say you're well respected. I didn't know you then. I know you now. I know you're a respectable dude. What is the moment where you're like, I've done all these things here in this country, which is awesome. It's beautiful. Maybe I'll go to America. What brings you to America?
Well, it was basically first of all, it was always my dream. It was
Okay.
always my dream to visit America. I did some flight training here in San Luis Obispo before I decided to move here. And it was always, to be honest with you, I wanted to see a wider horizon. And that
Yeah,
was certainly something that America offered at that time and still does.
sure.
Um, and my idea to come over here was 2 things. First of all, you don't have so many travelers. There's a amount because there's limited helicopters and limited work. So here was the option much bigger. You know, we don't have tourist flights. We don't have things that fly you around like in the Grand Canyon or in Las Vegas around the town. And that there's a lot of job opportunities. So my first job was actually down in Los Angeles, flying for a news station, and we did the traffic watch, the morning radio show and TV show. It was in the beginning it was radio, then they added TV to it. So we did the morning TV show, radio shows for the daily commuters, looking down on the blocked highways was one of the things. And then I was also flying up in San Luis Obispo short time and becoming CFI, flight instructor over there. And that was actually when in 2008, then I got the job in Las Vegas for flying for Maverick. But once I arrived in 2008, everybody knows that's when the economy collapsed. And especially Vegas got hit very hard with that because
Imagine.
all of a sudden they told me, I'm sorry, we had to let a few pilots go, and since you're a new guy, you're
Low on the totem pole, yeah.
so I was kind of stranded in Vegas at that time and at that moment, and had to look for alternatives. And nobody was hiring at that time helicopter pilots anymore because it was just the entire economy collapsed. So I had options either to go into other countries, which I was not prepared for at that time, or just do something different. And
Yeah.
that brought me into the security business.
So in 2006, you moved to America. Is that correct?
Right.
Yep. So
Right.
2006, you come over to America. You start out in California. You're doing some flying things. You start doing a little bit of instructional, and then that takes you to Las Vegas. During all this time, did you have family or friends here, or were you just solo act?
Nobody. Had nobody
Wow.
here.
See, that's another big part of the story is I think a lot of times people hold back from doing something because it's an unfamiliar move. They don't know anyone in a place, and so they're scared of that. Uh, where does that confidence, because that's a whole nother level of confidence, come from for you to be able to do such a bold, brazen thing, move into a different country to a place where you don't know anyone and starting from scratch? Where does that come from, Martin?
I think this is I have met a few people like me throughout the years, and
Hmm.
interesting enough, they're all in aviation for some reason.
You got to be kind of bold to
It
do
might
that.
be just it might be just that type of people that are crazy enough to do that. I think the 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 fear got taken from me because once I started my helicopter company in Austria in 2003, I negotiated with my business partners that I'm gonna get the training on the largest helicopter in the world, which was taking place in Russia. So nobody wants to go to Russia, but I had to. You know, you didn't don't speak the language, but I had to. You know,
Yeah.
so we did training in Kremenchuk, we did training on Rostov-on-the-Don. So I got trained on two types of helicopters we later on used in the business we built up in Austria. I think that these two moves they took all the fear away because now you're in a new country, and I have to say back then Kremenchuk was in the Ukraine, and Rostov-on-the-Don is right on the border, but it's already in Russia.
Hmm.
Uh, Back then, no, but it was just if you think about 1991, perestroika started to happen, where all these countries basically separated from the old UdSSR,
Hmm.
which has still no defense line at our Austrian border, where people got shot if they tried to get over. And that just, you know, with Gorbachev and so on, that all went away. But now, a few years later, and that's not really a decade is not really a long time span for a country. Now you go back into these communist countries where you heard all these horror stories for flight training. But I have to say, uh, yeah, it took away the fear. It took
So in
away the fear.
2003, you moved to Russia?
Yeah, it was for about 6 months of training. Just not really moved, but you were there for a good part of the time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say moving to a country like that and being able to establish yourself, that you really are facing a whole nother monster. Coming to America probably did seem like an easy move after that.
That was easy. At
Yeah,
least I
that's
spoke the language
exactly right.
partially.
Well, yeah, no, it's perfect. I mean, honestly, I can understand you better than maybe some people in Arkansas, as we mentioned. So, uh, I'm picking on Arkansas, but I love Arkansas. Don't get me wrong. All right, so whenever you get your helicopter pilot's license, and you're right, the economy it just collapsed in 2008, 2009, and obviously taking helicopter rides is it's an extracurricular activity, and obviously, casinos are an extracurricular activity. Those things take a huge hit. You got to shift, you got to pivot again. Now, we've already established Martin can pivot, and you're not afraid to redefine yourself completely from something totally different. So at that point, you had that background in technology, clearly. Were you thinking technology? What made you go to security?
Uh, you know, I was constantly reaching out to companies that were hiring, but right there and then, that was just a breakup of before they started putting in TE. We started in about, where they had a huge rollout, and that was my option in 2012. However, back then, before 2012, there were few options available. The biggest thing was credentials. So, like you were wondering, why did you finish a college with a degree in 18 years old?
Right.
So, what I would have had to do was do a transcription of my school, which cost a lot of money, and I didn't want to invest that. And plus, you know, here was just the thing. I had this wonderful moment, and I will tell you about this moment here. I was sitting in San Luis Obispo on the beach, and that was actually the first time that I realized that I completed two, if not three, out of my goals being 6-year-old boy. Uh, Actually four. And I was sitting at the beach. I'm like, wait a minute. I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. I became a helicopter pilot. I wanted to be a firefighter. I became a firefighter. I wanted to be in the military. I was in the military, which is not really a dream because it's a mandatory thing. But like,
You
I would be
embraced it.
funny to become a police officer.
Right, right.
Right? Would be funny now to become a police officer, law enforcement, whatever.
Yeah.
Not possible for non-US citizen though. However, I was like just realizing that on the beach that actually out of my goals, I fulfilled three of them. I'm here in the
Mhm.
United States, where I always wanted to be. I am, yeah, I can hook off two other goals that I had in my mind, and here's I'm setting out now for number three or whatever comes, adding more dreams to it. It's I always say, the dream is you have to transfer it to a goal. You have to put a timeline on it,
You
and
do. And you got to take action.
I have to do. And I watched the movie The Secret. I
Mhm.
love the movie The Secret. Uh, it doesn't really happen that you just have to sit down and sit on your ass and just think about, and the universe is gonna realign around yourself.
Right.
Yeah, you have to get your ass up and catch the universe,
Gonna
go
go get
grab
it.
the universe. Uh, of course, if you have a focus on something, let's just say like it happened to me, you want to fly helicopter, you start talking to people that fly helicopter, you meet more people that fly helicopter. This is what it means the universe is aligning around you. These people give you leads. They say, hey, go to this flight school, go to that flight school. And more comes into. Funny story was that I didn't even have a pilot license at that time when I sold the biggest contract for our future company that I was not even created yet. I mean, we are still holding the books of building the a ski lift in just one day on the highest elevation with the heaviest loads. And that was just because I was listening to a conversation in a bar.
It's
And
funny,
I
isn't
had
it? How leads
yeah,
connect, dots connect. That's wild.
right. And I just had the guts to say, hey, I'm gonna make the calculation and I'm gonna promise you that we're gonna fly these loads. And we built you a ropeway in one day. And he started laughing at me. And 3 years later, we did the job,
Yeah.
you know?
That's
So,
amazing.
uh, that's what I'm saying. This is the universe aligning for you. Is you go find the universe. You go out there and grab the universe, and you have to focus. And once you focus, you start talking to the right people. You will talk to a lot of wrong people. You will get sidetracked sometimes, but you will always find your way back. And then you just keep your focus. As long as you are focused, you will hit the target. And
Right.
that is the universe aligning for you. So everybody that has out there a dream, go for it. You know,
Start taking action. And then I like the part where you said surround yourself with those that are already doing that thing that you're wishing to do, right? So
right.
if you want to become a pilot, you don't go hang around a bunch of truck drivers. You got to go hang around pilots, right? So you got to be
Yeah.
around that environment that you're looking to pursue. Just one more little connecting point for us, Martin. I was also security at a casino for 1 year while I was going to paramedic school down in Tunica, Mississippi. So transitioning that into your security role, what exactly was it you were doing whenever you transitioned into security at, was it in Las Vegas? It was in
I
Las
was Las
Vegas.
Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah, if this move was more a little bit an emergency move, because out of a sudden I had no job as a pilot anymore. I needed to do something and I needed to do something quickly. Um, which is basically, yeah, the next thing. And I had a little bit interest in playing a little bit security there. So I did go and did get my armed license and I did get all of that. And I started working in security, and obviously of being in the fire department, I had some leader qualifications and I immediately rose up in the ranks. I became sergeant after 6 months, team lead and so on. And it was a good learning curve. It connected me to a bunch of other peoples that got me later on then into um, fugitive recovery. And then later on, I got the recommendation, go start working for the US Marshal Service. And so it all leads one to another, one to another. And that's why I'm saying, again, here's the thing, you focus on something, what you want to do. And yes, it actually, I mean, a lot of people think this is crazy. Who wants to do security? I had this, I wanted to do it,
Start
I
somewhere.
wanted to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so in the process of this, how long was it that you were involved in law enforcement of all aspects? So whether it was marshal service to security, how long? What was that span? What was those years?
That was 4 years. So
Yeah.
from 2008 to 2012, and a little bit later on, but in different occasions, that was more than private security. And yeah, playing bodyguard for
I just say you do have the bodyguard look, right? So you have a really
yeah.
cool hat or something. I would buy it. I would be like, yes, put him in a movie at least.
But it's the sunglasses you need.
Could
That
be the
makes
glasses too. It's true.
yeah,
That's
that's the
true.
sunglasses that makes you a bodyguard.
That's right. That's what it is. And so now during this time, and we mentioned this before the show started, you actually were shot 3 times. Was all that during the security and the marshal, all of that, those 4 years, was that when that happened?
It was actually the 2 times were under the in the Las Vegas Regional Justice Center, and it's funny to say because if I tell you where I got shot, you wouldn't believe it's in the marriage license bureau. So
Interesting.
we did the security at the marriage license bureau, and well, it seemed like somebody didn't like that his ex-girlfriend got married to a new dude, and he wanted to disrupt their honeymoon in a most brutal way, and that was actually the first time. Uh, Thanks God we all wore body armor, and so all my vital organs were protected, and I mean, and nothing happened there. And the second time, that was actually after leaving or the third time, after leaving the U.S. Marshal Service. I was working for a telecommunication company again in Las Vegas, and even a lot of people think Las Vegas is a safe city. Yes, as long as you stay on the strip, it's safe. We have 25,000 armed security guards there, a high police presence. You go 2 sides off the strip into side roads and so on, you're in gangland. And just mentioning it, so when I started security in Vegas in 2008, we had 17 gangs there. And after the banks dropped in 2010 for cash buyers, all these foreclosed properties back on the market, the only one that had cash funds were gangs. And we had out of sudden 57 gangs coming from Los Angeles with cash funds to buy all these houses. And
Wow.
that was a huge change
Mm.
in the environment in Vegas. And I think right now they are looking at 77 or 78 gangs out in Vegas that pretty much control the city. And even though you don't hear it, but you have about 4 to 5 shooting deaths every day. Even you don't see it in the news.
Yeah.
But they don't want to scare all these tourists away. That's
Right.
because when it became a daily occurrence. I mean, we don't hear anything about the war in Iran and Israel anymore because it's not good news. It's
Yeah.
not interesting anymore. It's the same old. We don't hear anything about Ukraine anymore unless they spend a lot of money on it or
Mhm.
whatever. It just became daily occurrence, and so does violence in Vegas a daily occurrence. You don't have to ring the news about it unless it's really that somebody goes up on a tower again and shoots 56 people.
Right, right. It's interesting because I live in Memphis, right outside of Memphis. I live in Mississippi, but I'm right outside of Memphis, and I worked in Memphis all those years on the fire department. And much the same, Memphis is always near the very top in most dangerous cities in America. It's always off of per capita, and we have tons of shootings daily. And you're right. Much of it is not reported. In fact, one day, Martin, in one day, I made 3 shootings. None of them made the news that night.
Yeah.
0 shootings made the news that night. And so if you ask people from Memphis, every news cycle, there are shootings that are reported. But for every 1 shooting that's reported, I can't even tell you how many go unreported because, like I said, in that one day, I made 3 and none of them made the news. Now, I made plenty that did make the news, but a lot of times there's a bigger story, whether it was a child being shot
Right.
or it was a particular place that the shooting took place that you just couldn't hide because everybody was around it, you know. So to that point, yes. And the gang thing, I wanted to add something to that. Recently, I did if you follow any of my stuff, you see that I do speeches and I go with, I do like things with children, a lot of mentorship with kids. And a lot of that is high school kids. And so we were talking about gangs in America, and I had done some research. It blew my mind. I had to read this number like 10 times. There are documented over, are you ready for this number? 33,000 gangs in America that are documented, that have an organized group, over 33,000. That blows my mind that there's that many gangs within one country. Now, granted, there are the bigger ones that everybody knows about, like the Bloods, the Crips, etc. But that is a tremendous amount, and it grows all the time. So, and that's what's recognized by the FBI. So it's like that's what their statistics pull from. We're getting close to the finish line, but look, here's the thing. I'll bring up the shooting thing because you clearly have lived a life of adventure. None of it had deterred you. You have chased, if there was a moment or slash an opportunity, you took those chances. And that's why I love your story. And that's really what I'm hoping my viewers get out of this. If they've been sitting around thinking about, man, I'd really like to do this or do that, take action. Great advice. Surround yourself with the people that do those things so that you not only, one, can learn if that's really what you want to do, but then two, you get some experience to get your foot in the door. Now, after the security, and I want you to tell about it. So here it is now, 2012. You're gone past all these things. What is it you're doing now, and what led you to what it is that you do now?
Well, I'm still in the came back in the telecommunication, a more quiet job, I would say. Shootings. I got disappointed in the first year. But after that, nothing really big happened anymore. And I'm working now for our local utility provider, APS, here as a microwave engineer, and work from home. Love the job. Do a lot of design work of microwave path, what we have out there. Make sure that the power grid stays up and operational. So that's the good part. I also work with my better half, Anita. She's the laser girl of Northern Arizona. And we see here in the back, oh, you don't see in the background because I have the background on. We do provide laser equipment for med spas and so on, and we do repairs of laser equipment. And we opened up a school, a laser school, so we also train students to become a certified laser tech. So I'm pretty busy with between APS and Anita. I'm staying busy.
You know, it's interesting because that's why I wanted to wrap up on this note. It's kind of like your life went full circle. You know, you started out in engineering out of school, and then when you went into the military, you know, you used a little bit of that, but then it kind of branched into other areas. And then on the back side of everything, you're right back to the tech world. You're right back to doing things that are of a more technical scope, I would say. And to your point, and what is the name of your wife's company, by the way? Because this is how we actually met. Your wife and I were on that show together, and she was there with her business, and you were along for the ride, which was that was a good move for you too.
Support us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Laser Girl Skincare, and we have 4 locations in Northern Arizona, in Sedona, Prescott, Cottonwood, and Flagstaff. So she did an amazing job on building that company.
Yeah, do you have a website? Obviously you do.
Oh, it's www.laserskin.com. What is so unique about Anita and her team is we go out of the line of what everybody else does. Everybody else is providing packages and so on with name branded machine what costs a ton of money. She makes more the approaches. Skin rejuvenation, anti-aging should be affordable for everyone. So we found a little bit that basically the name branded machines, they cost you about 250,000. Which is a big investment for every med spa. So whoever gets ever in the med spa business and you go in there and see these machines, just think about there's a little house sitting in the corner. And And this is why med spas are sometimes really struggling. I mean, they have to charge high prices. It's not because it's worth it, it's because they have to. They have to make
Recuperate their
payments.
cost. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to make payments $4,000, $5,000 per month for the leasing of that equipment.
Mm.
And we work with manufacturers of this equipment directly, and we are sourcing our own equipment and branding our own equipment. And I can tell you, it's the fraction of the cost. We are way, way lower than those, which basically makes them affordable. And we just onboarded another laser girl. She had her own company and she was drowning in payments because you have to have a certain type of equipment. You have to have a certain amount of equipment to do all that. But if you are already 750,000 in debt and you are operating a small med spa in a small town like Cottonwood or surrounding areas, you don't have the foot traffic to support all that. And she
Mm.
was about to give up, and so we said, hey, you know what? Let's come on board. And I mean, it just turned her life around because she
Sure.
was working 3 jobs to
Mm.
pay for the one job
Wow.
and to support her family. And now she can relax. Her kids love it more because she's more around. She doesn't have the financial pressure anymore. She has more equipment available right now because we have every technology out there. And it's just like sometimes, and we want to spread that module out because we think or we believe there's a lot of these laser technicians, estheticians out there that are just drowning in these payments. And it's taking all their life out of themselves and their happiness about their job. I mean, the beauty industry is beautiful.
Mhm.
But when you look at your payments every month and how you're gonna make it,
That'll make
it's
you
gonna
age fast.
kill them. And we have
Exactly.
yeah, and we have a we have a solution for that, and just say, hey, you know what? We can help you guys. And so we are planning on rolling that program and that model out nationwide because there's and Anita by herself started in the same way. She started as a single mom in 2015 with
Mhm.
broken machines and and had now is now 10 years in business and worked her way up there. But she has a very good advice for all these women out there that are just don't know every day how do I make it to the next month.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's help out there, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Was the person that came on with you guys was it an individual from the blocks? I'm just curious.
No, no.
Okay. I just know that there was a lot of connections made in similar areas, and
Right.
a lot of folks have teamed up from that. For me, I've had you're like my fifth person that has come on my podcast that I met at that show. So, if nothing else, it was very productive in meeting awesome people. I'm just saying.
Oh, you know what? This is the biggest thing what I said. That's the biggest thing we took away from that show is meeting people like you
Yeah,
and seeing other entrepreneurs and seeing other ideas and what drives them and how it drives them. I mean, just think about the Kowalski's tap room. I mean, these guys are amazing. They are rolling right now like
that's
thunder.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. You know, it's funny because I think you could have had that show without the show. You could have just had like a conference, a week-long hangout with entrepreneurs conference, intermingle and share ideas, and it would have been gold just the same, right? The stuff that Wes taught us, I'm not saying that that wasn't valuable. It was, but I'm just saying the competition part of it, the TV show part of it was fun, but it was really the personal connections that made it worth it, at least for
Well,
me.
if you think about it, he has the whole blocks. I see it from his side. It's
Hmm.
amazing business idea. I mean, you think
Yeah.
about, everybody's sponsoring here another week, and I'm doing the math there. Yeah,
Oh, he's got it.
he
He's got some
can
stuff
even
figured
if
out
he
for sure.
can even if
Absolutely.
he gonna teaches you to clap your name,
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter. I
that's true. That is true.
mean,
Well, Martin, here we are at the finish line. So here's what I want to ask you. You still got fuel in the tank. I can tell that. So, what should the world expect from Martin Fritz moving forward? What are you looking at for the next 5, 10 years? What do you think might be the next thing for you?
Oh, it's certainly something coming, and we are in the works right now. We are working on a new product. Well, in the health industry, let's just call it that way. But what we want to do is, I'm very interested in all the earth frequency, and so on. So my technical part goes now gets combined with the beauty part I acquired through Anita, and we're gonna work on something that harmonizes on all the Schumann frequencies and the Fibonacci frequencies. So you will see something coming out, and probably, maybe, and hopefully, will one of you guys run into a Laser Girl studio one day and say, "Oh, I know that guy."
Well, I'm hoping you look on the TV one day and be like, Coach Camp, I am familiar with this fella. Yes. As I roll the brain.
I do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look, I know whatever it is you set your mind to, Martin, you and Anita are going to be absolutely fine. You're great examples to what can be. And not only that, I think that this is part of your story as well, is the American dream is real. You know, you come over here from another country with nothing and no one, and you've created a great lifestyle for yourself, obviously. But it took action and it took risk, and you had to put yourself out there. And hopefully that's what folks will do, that will be inspired by that. So, as a final word, what would you leave my listeners with all across the world? What is Martin Fritz's last comments?
Just believe in yourself, and just like I did. And yeah, even though your dream or your goal sounds too far to reach, trust me, if you do start doing the math how to get there, and you start surrounding yourself with those people that can help you or have the same goal than you do, and stop saying the dream. Put yourself a timeline out. Say, by that time I want to be there. And trust me, you're gonna see one thing happening is you set to yourself maybe a reachable goal in 2, 3 years. It's gonna speed up down the way. It's like you're gonna hit the throttle and you're gonna start racing.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, there was the whole thing. Sean Connery was the most interesting man on earth. I think you're in there with them. It's been a pleasure. I'm so glad you were able to find some time, come on here, share your story with my listeners. I think it's a great perspective of looking at two countries and similar occupations and how they play against each other. And ultimately, this is how we learn from one another. And even though I haven't had a chance to go to Austria and live, I do feel like I got a piece of that culture today.
You still have, hey, it's still there.
It's still there, and I'm still breathing. So it's a yet. That's why I say it's a yet for me. So thank you so much. Hey, follow Coach Camp and spread it all over Arizona. I've got some listeners out there. Spread that message out there to Arizona for me. Hey, and to my listeners, I want to tell you guys, thank you so much for always tuning in. This is not even possible without you. That's why all of this is put together is for you. So I'm going to ask, go to my website, motivatewithcoachcamp.com, go to my YouTube, subscribe, and until
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape,